They say that grief distorts time. In the days following Eliza's death, I found myself lost in a strange dimension where moments stretched into eternities and hours disappeared in a blink. My only daughter, my beautiful, brilliant child, was gone at 34. The funeral home smelled of lilies and formaldehyde, a sickly sweet combination that would forever haunt my dreams. I watched him from across the room. David, her husband of 7 years. He stood tall in his tailored black suit, accepting condolences with a practiced grace that seemed odd for a man who had just lost his wife. Something about his composure disturbed me. His eyes remained dry throughout the service while mine had not stopped weeping since the police called with news of the accident. 3 days earlier, they'd found Eliza's car at the bottom of Crescent Ridge, a winding mountain road she'd driven hundreds of times. The official report claimed she had swerved to avoid an animal, lost control, and plummeted over the edge. A tragic accident, they said. Simple. Clean. Case closed. But nothing about it felt right. Not the accident, not the hurried cremation that David had insisted upon, and certainly not the way he carried himself at the funeral, like an actor playing a part he had rehearsed. I never truly liked David. There was always something calculated behind his charm, something cold behind his smile. Eliza had met him shortly after her divorce from Mark, a kind, if unremarkable man who had adored her. The split had been amicable, but had left Eliza vulnerable. David had swept in with his ambition and intensity, and within months, they were married. As I watched mourners file past the large portrait of my daughter, her professional headshot with that confident smile that had opened so many doors for her in her career as a prosecutor, I noticed David moving toward me with determined steps. He navigated through the crowd with purpose, his expression unreadable. "Margaret," he said, taking my hands in his. His were cold despite the warm May afternoon. "There's something I need to give you." His fingers pressed something into my palm, a photograph, folded twice. Before I could open it, his grip on my hand tightened painfully. "She was never supposed to leave," he whispered, his voice suddenly raw with an emotion I couldn't identify. Then he released me and walked away, rejoining a group of his colleagues from the investment firm. I waited until I was alone in the funeral home's bathroom to unfold the photograph. My hands trembled as the image revealed itself. Eliza, unmistakably pregnant, standing in front of a cabin I didn't recognize. The timestamp in the corner read April 17th, 2022, 3 years ago. I stared at the image in disbelief. My daughter had never been pregnant. She had never mentioned trying for a child. And if she had been expecting 3 years ago, where was the baby now? As I stared at my daughter's smiling face and the clear swell of her belly beneath a flowing sundress, a cold realization washed over me. I knew nothing about my daughter's life in her final years, and whatever secrets she had kept had followed her to the grave. Or so someone wanted me to believe. The photo burned a hole in my pocket throughout the remainder of the funeral service. I found myself studying the faces of the mourners, wondering if any of them knew about this pregnancy, this grandchild that I had apparently never met. Had Eliza lost the baby? Had she given it up for adoption? Or was there something more sinister at play? I am not typically given to conspiracy theories or melodrama. At 63, I had built a career as a high school principal based on logic and measured responses. But as I watched David accept condolences with that same practiced smile, all my instincts screamed that something was deeply wrong. After the service, I drove back to my empty house, emptier still since my husband Robert's death 2 years prior. Without his steady presence, the silence was deafening. I placed the photograph on my kitchen table and studied it under the harsh overhead light. It was undeniably Eliza. The cabin behind her was rustic, with a distinctive red door and stone chimney. Mountains rose in the background, their peaks capped with snow despite the spring date on the timestamp. Why would David choose this moment, at her funeral, to reveal this to me? His words echoed in my mind. She was never supposed to leave. I reached for my phone and scrolled through my text history with Eliza. In April 2022, her messages had been sporadic. She had mentioned a heavy caseload, a major trial she was preparing for. There had been no mention of a pregnancy, no hint of a mountain retreat. I checked her social media accounts, scrolling back through years of carefully curated posts, work events, vacations with David, occasional dinners with friends. Nothing suggested she had been expecting a child. The next morning, I called Mark, Eliza's ex-husband. We had remained on good terms after their divorce, occasionally exchanging holiday cards and brief updates. He sounded genuinely devastated by the news of her death, and when I described the photograph, his confusion matched my own. Pregnant? No, that's not possible, he insisted. Eliza didn't want children. It was actually a point of contention in our marriage. She was adamant about it, said her work was too demanding, that she couldn't divide her focus. This aligned with what I had always known about my daughter. Eliza had been career-driven from a young age, determined to make her mark as a prosecutor. She had never expressed interest in motherhood, not even in hypothetical terms. I decided to visit her house the following day, hoping David would be at work. Luck was on my side. His sleek black BMW was absent from the driveway of their modern suburban home. I still had a key. Eliza had insisted I keep one, just in case, though I had rarely used it. The house was immaculate, almost sterile in its perfection. Everything had a place, from the alphabetized books on the shelves to the precisely arranged decorative items on the mantel. This had always been Eliza's way, orderly, controlled, meticulous. It was what made her such an effective prosecutor. But now, knowing what I knew, or rather, what I didn't know, the perfection felt like a facade. I moved through the house methodically, searching for any evidence of a child or a pregnancy. The guest bedroom had been converted into a home office for David. Eliza's office was down the hall, her legal briefs still stacked neatly on the desk, her laptop notably absent. I checked closets and drawers, feeling like an intruder in my daughter's life, but found nothing unusual. As I was about to leave, I noticed a small key taped to the underside of Eliza's desk drawer, the kind used for a safety deposit box. I pocketed it, unsure of its significance but unwilling to leave it behind. Over the next few days, I visited every bank in town, testing the key in their safety deposit boxes with no success. On the fifth day, at a small credit union across town, when I knew Eliza had no accounts with, the key slid into the lock of box 473 and turned with a satisfying click. Inside was a USB drive, a folded document, and a handwritten note in my daughter's precise script. Mom, if you're reading this, I didn't make it out. Don't trust David. Everything you need to know is here. I'm sorry. My heart raced as I unfolded the document, a medical record confirming a pregnancy in late 2021, with an expected due date in June 2022. The patient name was not Eliza's, but Elizabeth Smith, an obvious pseudonym, but the birth date matched my daughter's. The USB drive would have to wait until I returned home. I resealed everything in the envelope and left the bank, constantly checking to make sure I wasn't being followed. Back in the safety of my house, I plugged the drive into my laptop. It contained a video file labeled simply "Watch This First" and a folder named Evidence. The video began playing, and Eliza's face filled my screen. She looked tired, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. The timestamp showed it had been recorded just 2 weeks before her death. Mom, she began, her voice steady despite the worry evident in her eyes. If you're watching this, it means something has happened to me. I hope I'm being paranoid, but I've been a prosecutor long enough to know when to trust my instincts. She took a deep breath before continuing. 3 years ago, I was working on a case against Victor Mercer, one of the city's most powerful real estate developers. He was laundering money for some very dangerous people. We had solid evidence, but 2 days before the trial, our key witness disappeared. The case fell apart. She looked away from the camera for a moment, composing herself. What no one knew was that I was pregnant at the time. It wasn't David's. He and I, our marriage had been falling apart for years. It was just for show, part of his carefully constructed image. The baby was Marcus Reeds, my investigator on the Mercer case. This revelation hit me like a physical blow. I had met Marcus several times, a serious, dedicated man who worked closely with Eliza. There had never been any indication of a romantic relationship. We were careful, but I got pregnant. When I told Marcus, he was ecstatic. We planned to tell everyone after the Mercer case concluded. But then Marcus disappeared, just like our witness. 3 days later, they found his body in the river. Tears formed in her eyes, but her voice remained controlled. The police ruled it a suicide, but I knew better. Somehow, Mercer had found out about us. David was furious when I told him about the pregnancy, not because of the affair, but because of the complication it presented. You see, Mom, David works for Mercer. Has for years. His investment firm manages Mercer's legitimate holdings. I paused the video, needing a moment to process this information. My son-in-law was connected to the man my daughter had been prosecuting? How had I not known any of this? When I resumed the video, Eliza was explaining how she had faked a miscarriage, then secretly gone to a remote cabin in Colorado to have the baby, a little girl she named Marie. I couldn't keep her with me, it wasn't safe. So I arranged for her to be adopted by Marcus's sister in Canada. She's safe there, unknown to Mercer or David. The adoption was private, all records sealed. Eliza leaned closer to the camera, her expression intense. Mom, I've been gathering evidence against Mercer and David for 3 years. It's all on this drive. If I die unexpectedly, it won't be an accident. Take this to Detective James Cooper at the 12th Precinct. He was Marcus's friend. He'll know what to do. She paused, fighting tears. And Mom, find Marie. Her full name is Marie Margaret Reed. She'll be 3 years old now. She has your eyes. The video ended, leaving me in shocked silence. I had a granddaughter. Eliza had been murdered, and her killer was probably the man who had handed me the photograph at her funeral. Why had David given me that photo? Was it a threat? A taunt? Or was there something more complex at play? I opened the evidence folder to find hundreds of documents, financial records, photographs, recorded conversations. It would take time to go through it all, but one thing was clear. Eliza had built a case not just against Victor Mercer, but against her own husband. That night, I could not sleep. Every noise outside my window seemed menacing. If what Eliza had said was true, then David and Mercer had killed her to prevent this evidence from coming to light. And by giving me that photograph, David had sent a clear message. He knew about Marie. My granddaughter was in danger, and I was her only hope. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 15 years. I needed to process Eliza's revelations and decide on my next steps. If David suspected I had access to Eliza's safety deposit box, he might already be watching me. I had to be careful. I made copies of the USB drive and hid them in different locations, one in a hollowed-out book on my shelf, another in a weatherproof container buried in my garden. I couldn't risk losing this evidence. Next, I needed to find Detective James Cooper. A quick internet search confirmed he was still with the 12th Precinct. Rather than calling, phones could be monitored. I decided to visit him in person. The precinct was bustling when I arrived, officers moving with purpose through the maze of desks. I asked for Detective Cooper and was directed to a weathered man in his 50s, hunched over paperwork in a corner office. When I introduced myself as Eliza's mother, his expression shifted from professional politeness to genuine sorrow. I was at the funeral, he said quietly. In the back. I didn't want to intrude. I closed his office door and kept my voice low as I explained why I was there. His face grew increasingly grave as I recounted Eliza's video message and mentioned Marcus Reed's name. Marcus was my partner for 6 years, Cooper confirmed. His suicide never sat right with me. He was the most stable person I knew, and suddenly he jumps off a bridge? A week before a major trial. He shook his head. I tried to investigate, but the case was shut down from above. Political pressure. I showed him the photograph David had given me, and Cooper studied it with narrowed eyes. This cabin, he said, pointing to the background. I recognize it. It belonged to Marcus's family. Up in the Rockies, outside Durango. Can you help me? I asked. Eliza trusted you. Cooper was silent for a long moment. Mercer is powerful, Mrs. Hamilton. He's got half the city in his pocket, judges, commissioners, maybe even people in this precinct. If what you're saying is true, this goes deep. My granddaughter is out there, I insisted. And the people who killed my daughter might know about her. Finally, he nodded. I'll need to see that evidence. Not here somewhere safe. We arranged to meet that evening at a diner across town. As I left the precinct, the weight of the situation pressed down on me. I had spent my life as an educator, dealing with teenage drama and budget constraints. Now I was in the middle of something that sounded like a crime thriller, money laundering, corruption, murder. At home, I began systematically going through the evidence folder on the USB drive. Eliza had been meticulous, organizing everything chronologically. There were photographs of David meeting with Mercer in private locations, audio recordings of conversations discussing cleaning money through real estate deals, and spreadsheets tracking millions of dollars flowing through shell companies. Most disturbing were the emails between David and someone identified only as V, presumably Victor Mercer, discussing Eliza's pregnancy and Marcus Reed. Problem handled. Read one from David, dated the day after Marcus's body was found. She believes suicide story. Pregnancy complicates things. The reply came hours later. No loose ends. Handle it, or I will. I felt physically ill reading these exchanges. My daughter had been married to a monster, living under the same roof with him while secretly gathering evidence of his crimes, all while grieving the father of her child and arranging for her baby's safety. What kind of strength had that required? And how terrified must she have been in those final days? Before meeting Cooper, I decided to make one more stop at the offices of Eliza's law firm. Her former assistant, Tina, had always been fond of me, sending birthday cards and Christmas greetings from Eliza's office family. Tina's face lit up when she saw me, then immediately fell as she remembered the circumstances. "Mrs. Hamilton, I'm so sorry about Eliza. We're all devastated." I thanked her for the condolences, then asked if we could speak privately. In a small conference room, I carefully probed for information. "Tina, did Eliza ever mention working on a case against Victor Mercer?" Tina's eyes widened slightly. "That was years ago. It fell apart when the witness disappeared." She lowered her voice. "Between us, Eliza was convinced Mercer had something to do with Marcus's death. They were close, you know. Professional close, I mean." I nodded, not revealing what I knew about their relationship. "After that case, she changed," Tina continued. "Became more secretive. Started working strange hours. I assumed it was stress or maybe trouble with David." "Did she ever mention a pregnancy?" I asked, watching Tina's reaction closely. The assistant looked genuinely confused. "Pregnancy? No, never. Eliza was always very clear about not wanting children. Her career came first." I showed her the photograph. Tina studied it, brow furrowed. "That's definitely Eliza, but—" "I don't understand. When was this taken?" 3 years ago, apparently." Tina shook her head. "That's impossible. 3 years ago, Eliza was here every day, working on the Mercer case until it fell apart, then throwing herself into other work. She never took time off, except—" "Except?" I prompted. "She did take a medical leave. About 2 weeks after Marcus died. Said she needed minor surgery, would be out for 6 weeks. That was unusual for her. She'd work through a nuclear apocalypse if they let her. 6 weeks, just enough time to give birth and arrange an adoption before returning to work." It fit perfectly with Eliza's video testimony. "Did anything else unusual happen around that time?" I asked. Tina hesitated. "Well, David started coming by the office more often after she returned. He'd never done that before. And there was one strange incident. I came in early one morning and found him at her desk, going through her computer. He said he was looking for some tax documents, but Eliza was furious when I told her. This suggested David had suspected something even then. Perhaps he had known about the pregnancy, but not about what had happened to the baby." I thanked Tina for her time and headed to meet Detective Cooper at the diner, my mind racing with new questions. If David had only recently discovered Marie's existence, what had triggered Eliza's death now, 3 years later? Cooper was already waiting in a booth at the back when I arrived, nursing a cup of coffee. I slid in across from him and handed over a copy of the USB drive. "I've been looking into Mercer since you left," he said quietly. "His company just announced a major development deal with the city, a $1 billion waterfront project. The final approval is scheduled for next week. Could that be connected to Eliza's death?" Cooper nodded grimly. "With this kind of money on the line, and if Eliza had evidence of money laundering through his companies, absolutely. One prosecutor with a vendetta could bring down the entire deal. But why now, after 3 years? My guess? She was finally ready to move. These cases take time to build, especially when you're gathering evidence without official support." He pocketed the drive. "I'll need a few days to go through this and reach out to some people I trust. In the meantime, you need to be careful. If they gave you that photo, they're sending a message." "I need to find my granddaughter," I insisted. "If they know about her." "First things first," Cooper interrupted. "We secure the evidence, then we look for Marie. Marcus's sister, do you know her name?" I shook my head. "Eliza didn't mention it in the video. I might know. Marcus talked about her sometimes. Lives in Vancouver, I think. I'll make some calls." He leaned forward. "Mrs. Hamilton, I want to be clear about something. If what Eliza gathered is as damning as you say, a lot of powerful people will want it buried, and anyone who has seen it along with it. You need to watch your back." As if to emphasize his point, at that moment, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled into the diner's parking lot. Cooper noticed it too. "Don't react," he said calmly. "Finish your coffee, then follow my lead." 2 men in suits entered the diner, scanning the room with practiced eyes. When they spotted Cooper, they headed directly toward our booth. "Detective," one of them said, flashing a badge too quickly to identify. "We need to speak with you. Official business." Cooper smiled pleasantly. I'm off duty and having coffee with a friend. You can find me at the precinct tomorrow. It's urgent, the man insisted, his gaze shifting to me. Mrs. Hamilton, isn't it? David sends his regards. He's concerned about you. Ice formed in my veins. How had they found me? Had David been watching my house? Cooper stood slowly. Mrs. Hamilton was just telling me about her plans to visit her sister in Phoenix. Leaving tonight, aren't you, Margaret? I nodded, understanding his attempt to create an explanation for my imminent disappearance. Well, we'd like to offer her a ride home, the second man said. David insists. That won't be necessary, I replied, finding my voice. I drove myself. The first man's friendly demeanor hardened. We insist. Cooper's hand moved subtly toward his hip where, I presumed, his gun was holstered. And I insist you back off. This woman is under my protection. Unless you want to explain to your boss why you created a scene with a police detective in a public place, I suggest you leave. The tension was palpable as the men considered their options. Finally, the first man produced a business card and placed it on the table. When you're ready to discuss family matters, Mrs. Hamilton, call this number. David is very eager to speak with you. After they left, Cooper ushered me quickly through the kitchen and out the back door. They'll be watching your car, he said, leading me to his unmarked police vehicle. We need to get you somewhere safe, now. As we drove away from the diner, taking a circuitous route to ensure we weren't followed, I realized that the quiet life I had known was over. Like Eliza before me, I was now hunted by powerful men with dangerous secrets. But unlike my daughter, I would not face this fight alone. Cooper took me to a small cabin outside the city, a fishing retreat owned by his brother that wasn't registered in his name. It was basic but secure, with spotty cell service and no internet connection. Perfect for someone who needed to disappear. Stay here, Cooper instructed, handing me a prepaid phone. I'll call you on this when it's safe. There's a gun in the drawer by the bed. Do you know how to use one? I shook my head. Cooper spent 30 minutes showing me how to load, aim, and fire the revolver. The weight of it felt alien in my hands, but I paid close attention. My life might depend on it. I'll bring supplies tomorrow, he said. Don't leave, don't call anyone you know, don't use your credit cards or regular phone. As far as the world is concerned, Margaret Hamilton is on her way to Phoenix. After Cooper left, I sat on the small porch, watching darkness descend over the lake. The events of the past week swirled in my mind like leaves caught in a whirlpool. 1 week ago, I had been a school principal looking forward to retirement. Now I was hiding in a cabin with a gun, running from men who had likely murdered my daughter. I slept fitfully that night, waking at every sound from the surrounding woods. By morning, I was exhausted but alert, my senses heightened by fear and determination. Cooper returned mid-morning with groceries, a laptop not connected to the internet, and news. I went through the evidence, he said grimly. It's worse than we thought. Mercer's operation isn't just money laundering. It's a full criminal enterprise. Drugs, prostitution, contract killings, all wash through his real estate developments. And David isn't just involved. He's Mercer's right hand. What about Marie? I asked. The evidence was important, but my granddaughter's safety was paramount. I've located Marcus's sister, Catherine Reed. She lives in Vancouver, as Eliza said. I have a friend in the Canadian police reaching out discreetly to check on her and Marie without raising alarms. And Eliza's death? Do you think David? Cooper nodded solemnly. The timing aligns with Mercer's big development deal. My guess? Eliza was finally ready to move with her evidence. Maybe she even confronted David. How do we prove it? The accident investigation was rushed. I've called in some favors to get another look at the scene and the vehicle. If it was staged, there will be evidence. Cooper left again, and I spent the day reviewing copies of Eliza's evidence on the laptop he had provided. Among the files was a personal journal Eliza had kept, detailing her fears, her grief over Marcus, and her agonizing decision to give up Marie. I held her for 6 hours before Catherine came, she had written. 6 hours to memorize every detail of her perfect face. She has Mom's eyes and Marcus's smile. I took pictures that I don't dare keep except in my memory. This separation will kill me, but keeping her with me would kill us both. Tears streamed down my face as I read my daughter's words. What courage it must have taken to give up her child to keep her safe, to continue living with the man she suspected of involvement in her lover's death, all while methodically building a case against him. On the third day at the cabin, Cooper arrived with news about Marie. Catherine and the child are safe, he reported. My contact confirmed it without raising suspicions. But there's a complication. My heart sank. What kind of complication? Catherine is moving. She's accepted a job in New Zealand, leaving in 2 weeks. If Mercer's people are looking for Marie, international travel could expose them. We need to warn her. Cooper shook his head. Not yet. Any unusual behavior could tip them off. We need to secure the evidence first, bring down Mercer and David, then get Catherine and Marie to safety. He showed me photographs from his reinvestigation of the accident scene. The brake lines on Eliza's car were cut professionally done, hard to spot unless you're looking for it. And there were fibers caught in the doorframe that suggest someone else was in the car before it went over the edge. She was murdered, I said flatly. It wasn't a question. Yes. And I believe David did it personally. The medical examiner rushed the cremation at his insistence, but I found a preliminary report that noted bruising consistent with a struggle before death. A cold rage filled me, not the hot, explosive anger I had felt initially, but something deeper and more focused. This man had killed my daughter and orphaned my granddaughter. He would pay. What's our next move? I asked. I've made contact with an FBI agent who specializes in organized crime. With evidence this extensive, they can take over the case, provide resources and protection beyond what I can offer. Cooper explained that he had arranged a meeting with the FBI agent the following day. I would need to come with him to provide my testimony about the evidence Eliza had left. That night, alone in the cabin, I found myself talking to Eliza as if she could hear me. I'll find her, I promised. I'll protect Marie and make sure she knows how brave her mother was. And I'll see justice done for you and for Marcus. The next morning, Cooper didn't arrive at the usual time. By noon, I was worried. By 3, I was terrified. The prepaid phone remained silent. As dusk approached, I heard a vehicle approaching. I grabbed the gun, checking that it was loaded as Cooper had shown me, and positioned myself away from the windows. The car door slammed, and footsteps approached the cabin. Then a familiar voice called out, "Mrs. Hamilton?" "It's Detective Cooper." "Don't shoot." I lowered the gun but didn't put it away. "Come in slowly," I called back. Cooper entered, hands raised slightly to show he wasn't a threat. But something was wrong. His expression was too tight, his movements too careful. "Are you alone?" I asked, keeping the gun visible. "Yes," he replied, then added, "But there's been a complication. I need you to come with me." "What kind of complication?" "It's better if I explain in the car. We need to move." Every instinct screamed that something was wrong. Cooper wasn't behaving normally. Was he under duress? Had they gotten to him? "I'm not going anywhere until you explain," I said firmly, tightening my grip on the gun. Cooper sighed, then reached slowly into his jacket. I raised the gun instinctively. "Easy," he said. "I'm just showing you something." He withdrew not a weapon, but a photograph, another image of Eliza pregnant, this one showing her with Catherine Reed. The two women stood arm in arm on the cabin porch, both smiling despite the gravity of their situation. "I found this in a second safety deposit box," Cooper explained. "Eliza left another key with my name on it at the station. There was a letter explaining that if anything happened to her, I should find you and give you this." I lowered the gun slightly. "Why didn't you mention this before?" "I was waiting to confirm Catherine and Marie were safe before telling you the rest of Eliza's plan." "What plan?" "Eliza knew they might come after her eventually. She arranged for Catherine to move to New Zealand, paid for everything, set up new identities. The job offer is real, but it was facilitated by Eliza." Cooper paused. "And she wants you to go with them." I stared at him, trying to process this information. "Go to New Zealand? Leave everything behind?" "Until it's safe. Eliza provided funds, documentation, everything you'll need. Catherine is expecting you. She knows who you are." It seemed too convenient, too neat. And yet, it was exactly the sort of thorough planning my daughter would have done. "What about the evidence?" "The FBI meeting. Still happening, but without you. It's safer this way. Mercer has people everywhere. The less you know about the investigation, the better." Something still felt off, but I couldn't place it. Cooper sensed my hesitation and softened his approach. "Margaret, I promised Eliza I would protect you and help you find Marie. This is the best way to do both. Catherine is expecting us tomorrow. We need to leave tonight." "Us? You're coming too." "Just to make the introduction, then I'll return to handle things here." He held out his hand. "Please, we need to go now." I lowered the gun completely, but kept it with me as I gathered my few belongings. Something nagged at the back of my mind. a detail from Eliza's evidence that seemed important but that I couldn't quite recall. As we drove away from the cabin, Cooper explained the travel arrangements. We would drive to Seattle, where I would catch a flight to Vancouver. Catherine and Marie would meet me there, and together we would fly to Auckland the following day. What about my house? My job? I asked. All taken care of. Eliza set up a remote management service for your property. As for your job, well, you're about to become a grieving mother who needs extended leave. No one will question it. It all sounded plausible, exactly the kind of comprehensive plan my meticulous daughter would have created. And yet, that nagging feeling persisted. As we merged onto the highway, Cooper's phone rang. He answered via the car's Bluetooth system. "Cooper," he said. "It's Ramirez," a woman's voice replied. "We've got a problem. The evidence from the Hamilton case is missing from the lockup." Cooper's expression didn't change. "All of it. Every piece. And the digital copies are gone too. Someone wiped the server." "That's concerning," Cooper replied, his tone carefully neutral. "Have you informed the FBI contact?" "That's the other thing," Ramirez continued, unaware that I could hear every word. "I called the Bureau. They have no record of any Agent Winters working organized crime in this region." My blood turned to ice. Cooper had told me the FBI agent's name was Winters. "I see," Cooper said calmly. "Keep this quiet for now. I'll be back at the station in a few hours." After hanging up, Cooper glanced at me. His expression was unreadable in the dim light of the dashboard. "Problem?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nothing that affects our plans," he replied smoothly. But in that moment, I remembered what had been bothering me, a detail from Eliza's evidence. In an email exchange between David and V, they had mentioned a police contact, someone on their payroll who handled delicate situations. The contact's code name was Fisherman. The cabin where Cooper had hidden me was a fishing retreat. My hand moved imperceptibly toward my purse, where the gun lay hidden beneath a scarf. "Detective," I said carefully, "where did you say you met Marcus Reed?" "At the academy," he replied without hesitation. "We were partners for 6 years. According to Eliza's files, Marcus had only been a detective for 4 years before his death. Cooper was lying. Cooper was the fisherman. I had been hiding with my daughter's killer all along. My mind raced as I tried to maintain a calm facade. If Cooper suspected I knew the truth, he would likely kill me immediately. We were on a remote stretch of highway, no witnesses. My disappearance would be explained by the fictitious trip to Phoenix. "It's getting late," I observed, glancing at the darkening sky. "Maybe we should stop somewhere for dinner before continuing." Cooper considered this, then nodded. "There's a diner about 20 miles ahead. We can grab something quick." 20 miles. I had 20 minutes at most to formulate a plan. I needed to verify my suspicions beyond doubt. If Cooper truly was working for Mercer and David, he would have been involved in the plot against Eliza from the beginning. He would know details that only an accomplice could know. "I've been thinking about what David said at the funeral," I said casually. "That Eliza was never supposed to leave. What do you think he meant by that?" Cooper kept his eyes on the road. "Hard to say. Grief makes people say strange things." It seemed deliberate, like he was sending a message. "People like Mercer and your son-in-law operate in codes and signals," Cooper replied. "It's possible he was trying to intimidate you, suggest that Eliza's death wasn't an accident." I nodded, watching his expression carefully. The photograph confused me, though. Why would he give me evidence of a pregnancy I knew nothing about? To throw you off balance. Classic intimidation tactic. But why that specific photo? There must have been other ways to upset me. Cooper's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, perhaps because it connected to Marcus Reed. David might have suspected you knew about their relationship. I hadn't told Cooper that the baby was Marcus's. That information had been in Eliza's video, which I had described to him but never shown him. If he knew about Marcus being the father, he had learned it elsewhere. "You're probably right," I said, pretending to accept his explanation. "I just wish I understood why Eliza kept so many secrets." "People in dangerous situations make complicated choices," Cooper replied, his tone softening into false sympathy. "Your daughter was trying to protect you and her child." The diner appeared ahead, its neon sign flickering in the twilight. Cooper pulled into the parking lot, choosing a spot away from the other vehicles. "Why don't you go in and get us a table?" he suggested. "I need to make a call." This was my opportunity. "Sure. I need to use the restroom anyway." As I entered the diner, I glanced back to see Cooper already on his phone, his expression intense as he spoke to someone. I headed straight for the restroom, locking myself in a stall and removing the gun from my purse. My hands trembled as I checked that it was loaded, just as Cooper had shown me. Cooper, who I now believed had helped murder my daughter, and possibly Marcus Reed as well. The man who had pretended to be helping me while actually leading me into a trap. The restroom door swung open, and I held my breath. "Mrs. Hamilton?" A woman's voice called out. "Are you in here?" I remained silent, finger on the trigger. "Mrs. Hamilton, my name is Detective Ramirez. I work with James Cooper. You're in danger. It could be a trick. Cooper could have called someone to flush me out. How do I know you're really a detective?" I called back. "I just spoke with Cooper on the phone. He told me he was bringing you to meet an FBI agent named Winters." "There's no Agent Winters. Cooper has been suspended from duty for the past week pending an internal investigation into evidence tampering." I opened the stall door slowly, keeping the gun pointed at the floor but ready. A woman in her 30s with a detective's badge hanging from her neck stood by the sinks, her own weapon holstered but visible. "How did you find me?" I asked. "I've been tracking Cooper's movements since Eliza Hamilton's death. We suspected he might be corrupt, but we needed proof. When evidence from your daughter's case disappeared, I knew he was involved." She glanced at the gun in my hand. "I see you've reached the same conclusion." "He knows about Marie," I said, my voice breaking. "My granddaughter." Ramirez nodded grimly. "We need to get you out of here. Cooper has already called for backup." I intercepted the communication. "Two of Mercer's men are on their way." "What about Catherine and Marie?" "If Cooper is working for Mercer, we've already alerted Canadian authorities. They're moving Catherine and the child to a safe location as we speak." She held out her hand. "Come with me. Now." I hesitated only briefly before following her through a service entrance at the back of the diner. Her unmarked police car was parked behind the building. "Cooper will know something's wrong when I don't come back," I said as we pulled away. "That's why we're not using the main road." Ramirez turned onto a dirt track that ran behind the diner, eventually connecting with a secondary highway. "I have a safe house prepared. Genuine FBI agents are waiting to take your statement." As we drove away, I saw Cooper emerge from his car, scanning the diner parking lot with growing agitation. He pulled out his phone, presumably to call his backup. He looked small from a distance, diminished, not the trusted protector I had believed him to be, but a traitor who had betrayed his badge and helped murder my daughter. The safe house was a nondescript suburban home in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Two agents met us at the door, ushering me inside efficiently. The next several hours passed in a blur of statements, evidence reviews, and planning. I learned that Ramirez had been investigating Cooper for months, suspecting he was on Mercer's payroll. Eliza's death had accelerated the investigation, especially when Cooper had inserted himself into the case despite not being assigned to it. "Your daughter was building a case against Mercer for years," one of the FBI agents explained. "We had no idea until Detective Ramirez brought us her evidence. Eliza Hamilton was essentially running a one-woman sting operation from inside her own marriage." "Why didn't she come to you?" I asked. "Why go through all this alone?" "Because she didn't know who to trust," Ramirez answered. "After what happened to Marcus Reed, she realized Mercer had people everywhere, including law enforcement." She was right. The FBI had already secured the copies of evidence I had hidden and were moving quickly to build a case against Mercer, David, and Cooper. But the most pressing concern remained Catherine and Marie's safety. "We've arranged secure transport for you to Vancouver," Agent Wilkins told me. "You'll meet Catherine and Marie at a safe house there. After debriefing, all three of you will be moved to a long-term secure location until the trial." "New Zealand?" I asked, remembering Cooper's lie. Agent Wilkins shook his head. "That was never the plan. Cooper fed you that story to get you to go with him willingly. I'm not at liberty to disclose the actual location, but it's domestic and under constant protection." That night, as I tried to sleep in the safe house's spare bedroom, I thought about how close I had come to walking into Cooper's trap. If Ramirez hadn't intercepted his call, if I hadn't remembered that crucial detail about Marcus's career timeline. The next morning brought news that Cooper had been apprehended attempting to cross the Canadian border. David and Mercer had been placed under surveillance, unaware that their operation was about to be dismantled. 2 days later, I was on a private jet to Vancouver, escorted by federal agents. My heart raced as we approached the safe house, a modern apartment in a secure building with round-the-clock security. Catherine Reed opened the door, a tall woman with Marcus's same serious eyes and steady presence. She regarded me cautiously, then stepped aside to reveal a small figure standing behind her. Marie was beautiful, a perfect blend of Eliza and Marcus, with my family's eyes just as Eliza had said. Her dark curls framed a face that was hauntingly familiar yet uniquely her own. At 3 years old, she was solemn and watchful, studying me with the same intensity that Eliza had possessed from childhood. "Marie," Catherine said gently, "this is your grandmother. Your mommy's mother." The child looked at me without speaking, then held out a small hand as if offering a formal greeting. I knelt to her level instead, opening my arms in invitation but not insisting. After a moment's consideration, Marie stepped forward into my embrace. She smelled of apple shampoo and childhood, and as I held her, I felt Eliza's presence more strongly than I had since her death. "She knows about Eliza," Catherine explained later, after Marie had been put to bed. "I've shown her pictures, told her stories. She knows her mother loved her very much and arranged for me to take care of her to keep her safe." "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "For protecting her. For loving her." Catherine smiled sadly. "Marcus was my only family. When he died, I thought I had lost everything. Then Eliza showed up with Marie, and suddenly I had a purpose again." She handed me a small photo album. "I've kept records of everything, her first steps, first words, every milestone. Eliza couldn't be here to see them, but I made sure they were documented." The album was a treasure trove of the moments I had missed, Marie as a newborn, as a toddler taking her first steps, blowing out candles on a birthday cake. Catherine had included notes on each photograph, creating a narrative of my granddaughter's life. "Eliza called every week," Catherine continued, "on a secure line. She never missed a call, not once in 3 years. Marie knew her voice, would get excited when the phone rang at the scheduled time. I traced a photograph of Marie on a swing, her expression joyful and free. Did she know? At the end? That something was wrong." Catherine nodded. "The last time she called, she told me to be ready to move. Said she had finally gathered enough evidence and was going to act soon. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I would find you and make sure you and Marie were together." 2 weeks later, she had received news of Eliza's death. "I knew it wasn't an accident," Catherine said. "Eliza was too careful, too prepared. Someone had discovered what she was doing." We spent the next week in the safe house, getting to know each other while FBI agents prepared our transfer to a long-term secure location. Marie was cautious at first, but gradually warmed to me, especially when I told her stories about Eliza as a child. "Mommy was brave," she said one evening as I tucked her into bed. "Yes," I agreed, my throat tight with unshed tears. "The bravest person I've ever known." "Daddy, too," she added sleepily. "Aunt Catherine says he was a hero." I smoothed her curls away from her forehead. "He was. And you have his smile." As Marie drifted off to sleep, I thought about the extraordinary courage of her parents, Eliza, who had spent years living with a monster while meticulously building a case against him, all while protecting her child from afar, and Marcus, who had apparently died trying to expose Mercer's crimes. Their daughter would grow up knowing the truth about them both. I would make sure of it. The arrest came 3 days later. In a coordinated operation, FBI agents simultaneously apprehended Victor Mercer, David, Cooper, and a dozen associates. The evidence Eliza had gathered proved damning: financial records, recorded conversations, emails detailing criminal activities spanning more than a decade. David's arrest was televised, his composed facade finally cracking as he was led away in handcuffs. I watched the footage with Catherine, feeling not triumph but a profound sadness for what could have been, the life Eliza might have had if she had never met this man, if she had never been drawn into his web of deceit. "What will happen now?" Catherine asked as the news coverage continued. "According to Agent Wilkins, they'll be in prison for the rest of their lives. The evidence is overwhelming. We were relocated to a small town in Oregon, given new identities, and placed under the Witness Protection Program." Catherine continued her work remotely, while I found a position teaching at the local high school. Marie enrolled in preschool, where she quickly made friends and thrived in her new environment. Our life was simple but secure. Marie grew stronger and more confident each day, the shadows of her complicated beginnings fading as she embraced the stability of our unconventional family unit. As for me, I found purpose in this new life, raising my granddaughter, honoring Eliza's memory by ensuring Marie knew the truth about her remarkable parents, and working to build a future secure from the dangers of the past. 6 months after our relocation, a package arrived via secure courier, a final message from Eliza, arranged to be delivered after the conclusion of the case against Mercer and his associates. Inside was a letter, written in my daughter's precise handwriting. "Mom, if you're reading this, then you've found Marie, and the evidence I gathered has served its purpose. I'm sorry for the secrets, for the burden I've placed on you, but I knew if anyone could protect Marie, it would be you. There were times when I wanted to tell you everything, to seek your guidance as I always had in life. But the fewer people who knew about Marie, the safer she would be. And I couldn't bear the thought of putting you in danger. I don't know what my fate will be when this is all over. I've tried to prepare for every possibility, including the worst. But please know that whatever has happened, I made my choices with clear eyes and a full heart. Tell Marie that I loved her from the moment I knew she existed. Tell her that her father was the best man I ever knew, that his courage and integrity live on in her. And tell her that sometimes the hardest choice and the right choice are the same thing. All my love, Eliza. The letter was accompanied by a small velvet pouch containing a locket. Inside were 2 photographs, a tiny image of Eliza and Marcus together, smiling, and an equally small picture of Marie as a newborn. I placed the locket around Marie's neck on her 4th birthday, explaining that it had come from her mother. She wore it every day after that, a tangible connection to the parents she would know only through stories and photographs. As years passed, I often found myself studying Marie's face, seeing echoes of Eliza in her determined chin, glimpses of Marcus in her thoughtful expression. She was her own person, yet carrying forward the best of them both. On quiet evenings, I would sometimes take out the photograph that David had handed me at the funeral, the image that had set me on this journey. What did he hope to accomplish? To frighten me? To warn me? Or had some remnant of humanity compelled him to provide a clue that might lead me to my granddaughter? I would never know his intentions. But I understood now what Eliza had done and why. She had created a trail of breadcrumbs, the safety deposit box, the video testimony, the evidence, knowing that if something happened to her, I would follow that trail to the truth, and ultimately to Marie. My brilliant, brave daughter had outwitted them all, even from beyond the grave. She had ensured that her child would be safe, that her killers would face justice, and that the truth would not remain buried. In her final act of love, she had given me the greatest gift imaginable, a second chance to protect what she had cherished most. 10 years after Eliza's death, Marie celebrated her 13th birthday in our small Oregon town, surrounded by friends who knew her only as Marie Hamilton, my granddaughter who had come to live with me after her parents died in an accident. The trials were long over, the headlines faded. Victor Mercer had died in prison 3 years earlier, while David continued to serve multiple life sentences. Detective Cooper had taken a plea deal in exchange for testimony against his co-conspirators and would remain incarcerated for decades. Our lives had found a rhythm, a normalcy that had once seemed impossible. Catherine had eventually moved to be near us, buying a house just down the street. Between us, we had created a stable, loving environment for Marie to grow up in. On that birthday evening, after her friends had gone home, Marie asked to see the files, the evidence Eliza had gathered, the video testimony, all of it. She was older now, better able to understand the complex truth of her origins. Together, Catherine and I showed her everything, answering her questions honestly but gently. She watched her mother's video with silent tears streaming down her face, reaching out to touch the screen as if she could somehow connect with Eliza across time. She loved you so much, I told Marie, holding her close. Everything she did was to protect you. Marie nodded, wiping away tears. I wish I could remember her. Really remember her, not just from photos and stories. She's part of you, Catherine said, in ways that go beyond memory. Later that night, as Marie slept, I sat on the porch of our modest house, looking up at the stars. I thought about the journey that had brought us here, the grief, the danger, the discovery. I thought about Eliza, who had sacrificed everything for justice and for her child's safety. She's beautiful, Eliza, I whispered to the night sky. Smart and kind and strong, just like you. You would be so proud of the person she's becoming. There was no answer but the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. Yet I felt a profound peace, a sense that somewhere, somehow, Eliza knew. Her story hadn't ended at that funeral where David had handed me the photograph that changed everything. It continued in Marie, in the truth that had been revealed, in the justice that had been served. And in the quiet moments when Marie's smile echoed her mother's, I knew that Eliza had accomplished what she had set out to do. She had ensured that her daughter would have the chance to live freely, without fear, embraced by love. It was, perhaps, the greatest legacy any mother could leave behind.